It's kind of a wild thing to realize that we all actually possess a working time machine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We just, we don't really have a steering wheel for it.
Exactly. One second you're sitting in traffic actively stressing about your electric bill or whatever, and then you catch a tiny whiff of a very specific brand of like floor wax
Right.
or sunscreen.
Oh, the sunscreen one gets me every time.
Right. And bam, you are 7 years old again, standing in your primary school hallway, feeling the exact same anxiety of a forgotten math homework.
It's a total sensory ambush. I mean, you don't consciously choose to remember that moment.
Yeah.
The memory just, it simply demands to be felt.
Yeah.
It completely hijacks your current reality, sweeping you away before the logical part of your brain even registers what is happening.
Right.
We love to think we are the undisputed masters of our own minds, but our senses routinely say otherwise.
And that exact phenomenon is what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are thrilled you're sitting in with us today because we're looking at a stack of sources that took me completely by surprise.
Yeah, they are not our usual fare.
No, not at all. Usually we're dissecting dense academic papers or, breaking down historical biographies. But today, our sources are a collection of language learning transcripts.
Which is fascinating.
It really is. We're talking conversational podcasts, educational materials, daily dialogues created specifically to teach English to non-native speakers.
Right. Which, might initially sound like an unusual place to search for profound philosophical insights. But if you think about it,
Yeah.
to teach a language naturally, you really have to talk about universal human experiences. You can't just teach grammar in a vacuum.
Right. You can't just hand someone a list of verbs and say, good luck out there.
Exactly. You have to teach people how to express who they fundamentally are, how they feel, and what they have actually lived through.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission today is to use these sources not just as like a vocabulary lesson, but as a lens. A lens to explore the anatomy of memory, that universal rocky transition from childhood to adulthood, the stark generational divides in our recent history, and this very modern tension between following our dreams and actually answering to our landlords.
There's a lot to cover.
It is, but looking at these language materials accidentally gives us this incredible, unvarnished look into what it really means to be human.
Well, before you can even begin teaching someone how to say, I remember in a new language, you have to tap into the mechanics of how we actually remember things.
Right.
The materials tackle this right out of the gate by looking at our senses, pointing out that humans have about 220 million cell receptors.
Which sounds incredibly impressive until you read the next line in the text and realize a dog has billions.
Yeah, we are severely outmatched by the average golden retriever.
Truly. But the fascinating part to me wasn't the number of receptors. It was how our relatively weak sense of smell completely overrides our logic.
Oh, completely.
Like, it skips the rational part of the brain entirely and causes these massive, sweeping emotional responses. Why is smell the one sense that seems to operate outside the law?
Well, it comes down to a physiological shortcut in the brain. When you see something or hear something, that sensory data goes to the thalamus.
Okay.
And the thalamus acts like your brain's logical switchboard. It processes the visual or auditory information, makes sense of it, and then decides where to send it. But scent does not pass through the
It
switchboard.
just bypasses it entirely.
Entirely. It travels directly to the olfactory bulb, which connects straight to the amygdala, which is the brain's emotion center, and the hippocampus, which handles memory. It bypasses logic entirely.
Wow. That makes perfect sense. It's literally just wiring.
It's pure biology, yeah.
So memory isn't this neatly organized filing cabinet where you calmly pull out a folder labeled, 1998. It is a hidden tripwire, and a random smell is the foot that catches it.
That's a great way to put it.
But what these language courses focus on is what happens after the explosion. They teach phrases like brings back memories, but they also ask students to categorize their past selves.
Right, the identity mapping.
Exactly. They teach vocabulary around high school stereotypes. The rebel with long hair, the joker, the academic, the sporty kid. Why do we instantly revert to feeling like the quote-unquote rebel when we catch a certain scent?
What's fascinating here is that sensory triggers form the absolute anchor of our personal narratives. I mean, smell doesn't ask for permission to construct a timeline.
No, it just takes over.
Right. When you smell the scent of rain on a playground, your brain doesn't logically piece together the last 20 years of your life. It instantly bridges the gap between who you are right now and who you, quote, used to be.
Why?
And teaching language learners to say, I used to be a rebel, or I was the joker, is an exercise in contrast. We map our current identity by clearly outlining who we aren't anymore.
Which is heavy. Because that sudden realization that you aren't the rebel anymore is exactly the shock of adulthood.
It really is.
Suddenly, you aren't being shielded by your parents, you are the shield. And the language transcripts we looked at frame this realization as a massive, often quite painful trade-off. They draw this stark contrast between the innocence of childhood and the heavy reality of what we now casually call adulting.
The contrast they use to teach these concepts is both hilarious and deeply resonant. They describe childhood as this era of total safety.
Right.
You have zero worries.
Yeah.
You have grandmothers cooking unforgettable pasta where nothing else in the world matters.
Oh,
But the catch is you have no control over your life. Adults make all the decisions for you.
and then you grow up. You
Yeah.
get the ultimate freedom, but it comes with this crushing weight of responsibility,
Yeah.
bills, career choices, actually having to live with the consequences of your actions.
Yeah, there's no going back.
There's this moment in one of the materials where they talk about standing in a messy apartment, eating cereal for dinner, and genuinely wondering, am I actually an adult?
Yes. The cereal for dinner example is so perfect.
Right. If you are listening to this on your commute right now, think about the last time you bought groceries. That tiny mental calculation of, can I afford the name brand coffee this week? That is the exact friction these texts are trying to teach.
Exactly. It's the micro decisions.
But hold on, I hear this adulting complaint all the time, right? Eating cereal for dinner, avoiding laundry, complaining about having to make your own doctor's appointments. I have to ask, is this actually a profound psychological shift? Or are we just complaining about doing the mundane chores our parents used to do for us?
Yeah.
Is there real depth to this feeling?
Oh, it is much more profound than just doing the laundry.
Mhm.
And you can see it in the specific vocabulary of maturity that these sources emphasize. They aren't just teaching the word chore.
Right.
They focus on words like milestone, nostalgia, and innocence. Adulthood forces a permanent exit from the childhood comfort zone. When you're a child, your psychological landscape is defined by what is provided for you.
By someone else?
Right. But adulthood is a state of constant, unrelenting decision-making. You never get to turn it off.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That decision fatigue fundamentally alters how you view the world. You move from being the passenger to being the driver. And the driver can never fall asleep at the wheel.
It's the realization that the safety net is gone and you are now the net.
Precisely.
But here's what I found so compelling about our sources. While we all go through that individual shock of growing up trading the pasta for the cereal, so to speak, the actual context of growing up changes radically across different generations.
Oh, completely. The backdrop changes everything.
Exactly. And one of the conversational transcripts provides a highly specific, deeply personal case study to prove how different the world can be from one generation to the next.
Yeah, it serves as a perfect time capsule. It's a conversation between an English teacher named Luke and his mother, Gil. And they're basically mapping out the divide between the greatest generation, her parents, and her own experience as a baby boomer.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Gil's father fought in World War II. He survived the D-Day landings. He physically fought his way through Europe, surviving unimaginable horrors, and then returns home with severe PTSD.
Right.
And his survival mechanism, he never speaks of it, ever.
The stoicism of that era was profound.
Total silence. That was how that generation coped. Meanwhile, while he is away fighting for sheer survival, Gil's mother is surviving on the home front in her own incredible way. She actually bought a house for 600 pounds.
Which is just...
Wait, 600 pounds? I still can't wrap my head around that number, even accounting for inflation.
It is staggering to a modern ear. But look at the psychological foundation there. You have extreme trauma, literal life or death survival, and profound stoicism. How does a society function when an entire generation of men returns with silent PTSD?
They just push through it.
They just put their heads down and rebuild.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly illustrates how societal expectations shape our reality. Her parents' reality was dictated entirely by global conflict and the immediate need for stability.
Just keeping the lights on.
Exactly. Now contrast that heavy life or death silence with Gil's own youth as a boomer in the 1960s.
It's like looking at a totally different planet. She talks about going to Beatles concerts, casually listening to the radio, easily hopping from one secretarial job to another whenever she got bored.
Right, the economic man.
She openly admits to having, quote, low ambitions. Because at the time, society simply expected women to keep house and raise a family. She didn't feel this crushing pressure to build a massive, identity-defining career.
Because the societal script was restrictive, but incredibly clear.
Wow.
You knew exactly what was expected of you. And the transcript brilliantly contrasts both of those historical eras with modern women today who are bearing this intense mental load. Today's expectation isn't just to survive a war or to keep a clean house.
Oh no, it's so much more.
It is to balance demanding, high-pressure careers with raising children, all while self-actualizing, optimizing every part of your life, and broadcasting it online.
Three totally different worlds experienced by one single family. But what struck me the hardest is that Gil admits she never really asked her parents about their war experiences until it was almost too late.
Which is very common, sadly.
How does this generational amnesia happen? Why do we, as children, fail to see our parents as full, complex human beings who live through actual history until we are practically middle-aged ourselves?
Well, it happens because we only ever experience our own normal. When you were young, your parents aren't historical figures who survived D-Day. They were just the annoying people telling you to clean your room.
Ah.
A child fundamentally lacks the perspective to see outside their own immediate needs. It is only in hindsight, usually when you face your own crushing adult struggles, that you develop the empathy and the emotional vocabulary to look back and say, wait, what did you actually go through to get me here?
And in our fast-paced modern era, pausing to look back feels harder than ever. Which brings us to the defining struggle of our current generation.
The burden of choice.
Yes. If the past was defined by literal survival or following a very strict societal script, today is defined by the heavy burden of choice. Specifically, the tension between our dreams and our practical realities.
Yeah, if you look at how these ESL materials teach the vocabulary of dreams versus reality, it's actually quite haunting.
Oh, it really is.
They don't frame giving up on a dream as a sudden dramatic failure. They frame it as a slow fade. One of the conversational transcripts poses this quiet, heavy question that so many adults carry around inside them every day. Am I living the life I chose or just the life I ended up in?
And that fade happens so stealthily. You take a sensible job just for a year to save up, then you buy a car and get a car payment, maybe you sign a nicer lease, and suddenly you are locked in.
The golden handcuffs.
Exactly. The texts teach this through very deliberate vocabulary. They pit the word aspiration, meaning a strong hope or ambition, directly against apprehension, which is a quiet fear or worry.
Right. Aspiration versus apprehension.
They are literally teaching students how to articulate the exact friction of modern adulthood. You don't abandon your aspirations because you want to. You do it because, as you gain more responsibilities, safety starts looking very attractive. The apprehension takes over.
It is the friction between following your heart and answering your landlord. You have an aspiration to be an artist, but you have an apprehension about making rent.
There's a brilliant quote from the source that perfectly captures this. We hear cliche advice all the time, right? Follow your heart. Just jump and the net will appear.
Oh, I hate that advice.
Right. And the host in the transcript rightly counters with, some advice sounds like it has never paid rent in its life. So true.
My landlord also has opinions, and those opinions require cash. But on the flip side, the materials describe living an overly practical, disconnected life with this amazing analogy. They say it's like wearing shoes that fit but never feel comfortable.
Ouch. Yeah, that's incredibly evocative.
So my question for you is, does choosing practicality always guarantee that our short-term comfort will eventually create a deeper discomfort? Are we doomed to be miserable if we pay the rent instead of chasing the dream?
I really don't believe we are doomed, and the texts synthesize this tension beautifully. They reassure the learner that dreams and practicality do not have to be bitter enemies. They just need a better working relationship.
A negotiation.
Exactly. The mature choice isn't about abandoning your dreams. It is about finding a way to stay loyal to what fundamentally matters to you while simultaneously living responsibly in the real world. You can pay the rent and still fiercely protect the time you spend on things that give you purpose. So how do we actually execute that on a random Tuesday morning? The sources show us that this massive existential battle actually plays out in our everyday, seemingly mundane choices, like deciding where to live.
The city versus country debate.
Yeah, the texts set up this classic debate of city versus country life to teach the language of comparison.
It is the ultimate "what kind of life do you want" test. The city offers energy, opportunity, and excitement, but it demands you tolerate constant noise and stress.
And high rent.
And high rent, yes.
Yeah.
The country offers fresh air, peace, and a sky full of stars, but you might also be jolted awake by a screaming rooster at 5 a.m.
Which sounds awful, honestly.
Right. There is no perfect utopia. You are always trading one stressor for another.
And if you zoom in even closer, right down to our daily routines, these educational materials capture the universal struggle of simply getting out of bed. Think about this. These texts have to invent vocabulary to explain modern dread. They are literally teaching people words to describe having a full, serious negotiation with a heavy blanket in the morning. I know every single person listening to this knows that exact feeling in their bones. You wake up, the alarm feels like a personal attack, and you fall straight into what they call the morning scroll trap.
That phrase is so telling. Morning scroll trap. It captures a very specific modern paralysis.
You grab your phone, scroll for 5 minutes, and suddenly you are comparing your messy, uncaffeinated life to the highly curated billionaire highlight reels of everyone else on Earth.
Which is an unwinnable game.
Totally unwinnable. You end up with what the text calls a cluttered mind before your feet have even touched the floor. This is a universal human condition now, regardless of what language you speak.
This is exactly why the concept of anchors becomes the focal point in these lessons. To combat that cluttered mind, they teach vocabulary around finding small, safe activities to unwind and recharge.
So, what does this all mean? We're talking about really small things here. Making a cup of tea, sitting quietly on a balcony for 10 minutes, having an honest, no-pressure chat with a family member at the end of the day.
Just tiny moments.
Yeah. Are these little daily routines, our tea, our balconies, are they actually just us trying to reconstruct that absolute safety of childhood we talked about earlier? Are we just trying to build a tiny, safe room inside this overwhelming adult world?
I think that is a highly accurate validation of the theory, yes.
Yeah.
The goal of adulthood, as presented through these lessons, isn't to achieve a flawless, hyper-productive life where you conquer the world every single day.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. The goal is to build a life where you feel grounded, to step out of the chaos and reconnect with what is real. And one of the transcripts addresses the listener directly with a crucial, comforting reminder.
What's that?
It tells them that it is perfectly okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel drained or grumpy, or to have a messy evening where you eat cereal for dinner and watch too many videos. Your worth as a human being is not a homework score.
I love that so much. Your worth is not a homework score. It is such a profound relief to hear that, whether you're learning English for the first time or you've spoken it your entire life.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at the journey we've just been on. We started with the physiological shortcut of memory, how a single smell bypasses the logical switchboard of our brain and directly hits our emotional center, dragging us back to our earliest identities.
The sensory ambush.
Right. And then we moved into the heavy, often exhausting realization of adulthood, trading the safety of our childhoods for the crushing weight of endless decision-making. We mapped the shifting landscapes of generational trauma, moving from the silent survival of World War II to the complex mental load of the modern career.
It's been quite a ride.
It really has.
Yeah.
And finally, we looked at the daily battle to balance our deepest aspirations with the incredibly real demands of paying the rent, relying on small, grounding anchors to keep our minds from becoming completely cluttered.
It is a reminder that you, listening to this right now, are part of a massive, continuous human timeline. You are constantly negotiating the space between the person you used to be, the rebel, the joker, the child on the bike, and the responsible adult you have to be today. It is a shared struggle, and it is entirely normal.
It really is. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We established at the very beginning that our sense of smell is our strongest, most visceral tie to our past.
Right, because of the biology.
Exactly. It's the ultimate memory tripwire because of our biology. But our current modern lives are becoming increasingly digital. We live so much of our days through screens, virtual meetings, and apps. It is largely an odorless, physically flat existence.
Oh, wow, that's true.
So wait, I shouldn't say so. It makes you wonder, how is this going to affect what we remember 30 years from now? When everything important happens behind a pane of glass, what will be the smell of our digital adulthood? It's a wild thing to consider.
That is a fascinating question to leave on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.